Welcome to From Leads to Leases, a CCR growth podcast that helps senior living providers transform their complex challenges into opportunities. Listen in for stories from industry leaders, innovative strategies, and insights. And with our expertise, learn how to increase occupancy faster, guaranteed.
Welcome back to another episode of From Leads to Leases, the podcast where we dive deep into the senior living industry, offering insights, strategies, and stories from the experts at the forefront. I'm your host, Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth, here to guide you through the evolving landscape of connecting communities with the families and residents they serve. So today we are excited to have Christine Sevier with us. Christine is the founder of Creating New Hope, a referral and placement agency in the Bay Area that helps families find quality senior care communities. With a background as a mental health counselor and local advocate and case manager, as well as her personal experience caring for her grandmother with Alzheimer's, led her to become an expert in senior placement. She's here to share how her experience shaped her approach to providing personalized and effective placement services for seniors, helping families navigate the complex world of senior living. So we'll dive into her experience as a placement advisor, the challenges seniors and families face in choosing the right care today, and how the system can sometimes mislead families into making decisions that don't serve them in the long run. So welcome to the show, Christine. I'm super grateful to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I think to start, you've been in the senior care space for a while, so starting with your own experience caring for your grandmother. How did that experience shape your decision to start Creating New Hope, and what did you see as the biggest gap in the industry?
My personal experience was the catalyst for everything. And I think oftentimes you may find a lot of people that are in the senior placement and referral side of the business, they have a personal story, their why, so to speak. And I will say for me, when I became the co-conservator for my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. And I was just like walking alongside my grandparents, helping with, the daily tasks, shopping, popping in every now and again. And once my grandfather needed dialysis, I really had to step up to the plate like overnight. So I was like many in this sandwich generation. I had kids that were in elementary school and I was helping manage all of the care for my grandparents and still trying to work, and it was impossible. So I quit my job and I was full-time, their care navigator, so to speak, especially with taking my grandfather back and forth to dialysis.
Sure.
And once he had passed within a year, I was full-time, all hands on deck with my grandmother, and it became clear that her care needs exceeded my expertise. I mean, I'm into fitness and I lift weights, I do CrossFit, and you would think that I would have the skill set to change somebody that's bedridden. No, that is a very particular skill set, and I was in way over my head, so I had to look for some options for her. And at that time, what the advice that I was given by, every nurse in the family was like, look, you have to be in a smaller residential care home. You have to find one of these little boarding homes for grandma, because that's where you're going to get that standby assistance. It's a smaller ratio. So I did like most folks, and I went to, search online, and I was given a list, and I showed up to some of these places that were on that list. And I just thought, there's no way. This can't be the only options that are out there. So back then, the transparency records from the Department of Social Services, you had to go downtown Oakland and say, hey, Department of Social Services, give me a list of these board and care homes that are mysterious. They have no internet presence. You can't find them anywhere. I need to know, who has the best records, right? Because my grandmother was bedridden. Her food was pureed. She was going to have a higher care need.
Sure,
so I wanted to make sure, right, that the place could provide that. And they gave me a list of about 5 places, and I seen one place that had was in business since 1993, and this is in like 2016 that I was looking. And she had not one complaint, not one, history of a bed sore or a personal rights violation. Couldn't find the lady on the internet anywhere. There was no Google review. There was no Yelp.
It's your needle in the haystack.
There was nothing. and she was 3 blocks from my house.
Oh, wow.
I was driving by this lady's house for a decade. And so finally I just knocked on the door, and she came over, and of course she was full. A lot of these really good board and care homes, it's word of mouth, so they stay full. So she was full. So I said, look, how do I get on your wait list? She came to my grandparents' house, sat with me and my grandmother, really took her time, um, and explained to me, what services she offered. And I was just sold. I said, you know what, I'll wait until that available bed is open. And I waited, and my grandmother lived there comfortably. I think I told you the last time we spoke, 2.5 years completely bedridden and
Wow.
never developed a pressure sore. Her hair was washed, her nails were painted, her sheets were changed. And this is somebody that couldn't communicate at all. And they really loved on her and took exceptional care of her. And that was it. I was sold on, how do I find more deli care homes for folks?
That's amazing that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know some states it's really difficult too because the inspection reports and things like that aren't even made public. So you're lucky that California is one of those states that allows that. So you transitioned from being a case manager and mental health counselor to launching your own advisory service. So what were some of the key lessons you brought with you from your time at John Muir Health to the senior care world?
So my time at John Muir was more with at-risk youth
Mm-hmm.
and substance abuse. So I was doing the care navigation for those folks. So stepping into the senior industry, you would think, oh, she's going to have like all of the resources and everything at her fingertips. Yeah, right. That is not true. And I will say, probably for a lot of social workers that are in the hospitals, they do rely on placement professionals to kind of say, hey, help us navigate what's available, who can provide what type of care. So I wish I could say, oh, yeah, my time at the hospital really served me. Not so much. My own personal experience in caring for my grandmother, that's what really gave me what I needed to open this business.
Far more impactful. Yeah. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that. And then, yeah, so you mentioned now many families are coming to you overwhelmed by the financial aspects of senior care. So how do you help families navigate the financial realities while also ensuring they make the best care decisions for their loved ones?
So I will say that I feel like families are a little more open to sharing their true financial situation with senior living advisors, placement professionals like
Mm-hmm.
myself. They're willing to talk about what assets do they have, because what I'm talking to families about is like, look, I don't want your mom to outlive her assets, and what could be her potential future care needs. Is there dementia in the family? Does she have any diagnoses that may lead to her becoming immobile later? So we need to have those hard discussions, because if I would say 90% of the times families that come to me, they are selling their home to pay for care. Very few individuals will have a long-term care insurance contract. I don't, I don't know if you've seen a lot of, like, with some of my clients that were old Pac Bell guys that had Genworth long-term care insurance contracts. Some of my clients were getting letters from Genworth like, hey, we'll purchase you out of this contract for $80,000. I was like, don't you dare do that. Keep that contract. So we're helping families, facilitate that real estate transaction by connecting them to a senior real estate specialist. So there are a lot of senior real estate specialists that have access to programs such as bridge loan programs,
Mm-hmm.
where they can get access to like $50,000 up front, so they can get, mom moved, situated, get the house ready to be sold. And then connecting them with VA reps, elder law attorneys that can also help them apply for like government benefits. But I will tell you, government benefits are far few and in between. We were just sent a notice the other day, I believe the ALW, I'm going to jump on a call this afternoon, but the assisted living waiver program has met its capacity. So a bunch of people are jumping on a call this
Oh,
afternoon
wow.
to figure out, what does that mean exactly? Is this just because it's an election time where we're waiting for some things to shake out, or is this program on pause? Like, what does that mean? Because we do have an affordability crisis, and there are a ton of older adults who are going to be dependent upon that Medi-Cal waiver.
Given light of that, I mean, how important is it for people to have long-term care insurance?
I mean, I absolutely, if you're young and it's still affordable to get it, I would absolutely get it.
Yeah.
Or save your money, invest. And I strongly encourage all of my families, like, invest in your health. Go get a gym membership. The folks that are really thriving in independent and assisted living communities, those are the ones that still have mobility, so take care of your physical health. That is so, so important.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're probably the third guest in a row that's mentioned long-term care insurance. So after I spoke with my last guest, I was doing some research on it. Like, when is the best time to invest in long-term care insurance? And one of the articles, it was a recent article too, said you should wait until you're in your 50s to do it. And I was like, why wait that long? Shouldn't this be like life insurance, where the sooner you pay in, the less the payment would be and the more money you would accrue essentially into that plan over time? Or does it make sense to wait?
Well, I think everyone, their own financial situation is very unique. So you
Yeah.
have to look at your own financial. But I know, when being in this business, I'm 43. And so when I turned 40, so 3 years ago, my husband and I went and got quotes from every long-term care insurance place. But I also know, on the back end, getting those policies to pay can sometimes be difficult. They were like, well, we want a 5 or 4 of activities, support with activities of daily living. So if you have dementia and you just need prompting and you can still toilet yourself, maybe that claim doesn't get approved until you're like way at the end.
Yeah.
So I have connected families to, like, high cap, like some advocacy networks, when long-term care insurance policies are getting a little squirrely. So when we looked at it, and I was 40, I wanted to say they wanted like $1,200 a month. And I was like, or I can just put that in the S&P 500. I think the way you really have to kind of balance it. And if you look up CalPERS long-term care insurance
Mhm.
contract, a lot of the county employees had CalPERS, and there was a major lawsuit with CalPERS. If you go try to purchase CalPERS, you can't even purchase it right now. Some people were refunded
Wow.
their premiums.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'm going to have to keep my eye on this, because I'm
Yeah.
45 and I'm like, I don't think I want to wait till I'm 50 to start investing into that. But also, yeah, just making sure when the time comes that you can actually access that insurance would be super important. So what do you think sets Creating New Hope Senior Living Advisors apart from larger referral agencies like A Place for Mom? And why do you believe personalized placement services are more effective?
Well, I will tell you, when I was looking for my grandmother, I'm a millennial, so we're data rich. We want to know who, we want to know how, we want to know how many, we want to know all of the data points. And that was super important to me.
Sure.
So when I started this business, when I was looking for a platform that would help my business in terms of my database and managing every aspect of the business, one thing that was so important to me was, I wanted, when a family receives a referral from me from 3 to 5 places, I want them to have the link to the Department of Social Services transparency records for that specific facility. So anytime a family receives a referral from me, not only have I personally vetted the place and walked it, right? So I'm getting to see the community, I'm getting to know the administrator, how she operates her business, what's important to her, what her core values are, or him. And especially if the owner operator is involved, a lot of times, and I will say lately, you'll see a lot of like Airbnb folks getting into this business model, and they're like, "Whoa, you can, $10,000 a bed, and you're open a care home," and it's like,
Yeah.
and not
Those micro
non-operator, and I'm like,
communities. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, yeah, right. This is a 24-hour business. You're going to be connected with, if you want to thrive, you're going to have to work on your business and in your business. So people that work with me, I'm getting to know the administrators. I know the communities. I'm providing there with the data points. And then, there's nothing more important than having a local expert, not someone that's in Wisconsin and you're in the Bay Area, to say, hey, I know Deli. She's worked with families for the last 7 years. She provides fantastic care. She has great reputation. That is more valuable than, an internet person answering a phone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things with A Place for Mom. I know they boast that they have 400 plus agents nationwide, but they also represent anywhere between 14,000 to 20,000 communities. So how in reality do those 400 agents know each of those facilities and know the executive directors and, the teams involved? There's just no way they can handle that capacity. So I know that.
No. Unless you're contracted with A Place for Mom, they will not list you on their website. So
Yeah.
when I went and got those referrals from A Place for Mom, and I looked at those communities directly from that platform, I wasn't impressed. I was not impressed. Now, the ones that I found on my own, I was like, wow, this is so refreshing.
Yeah.
So unless you're contracted, you're not visible.
That's
So
that's a
there can be
huge part.
places right in your backyard.
Yeah. It's a huge part of the problem. They're actually under investigation by the Senate Special Committee on Aging just because of that, because they're not representing all these communities. So it's giving people a very skewed perspective of what's available in the market. Like you said, there could be 5 communities in your backyard that are far better than what's on that website, but you would never know it. And unfortunately, they have such a presence on the internet that's usually the first place people go when they're searching for care, and they don't have a specific community or brand in mind. So that can be a little scary for people, for sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, outside of that being probably one of the major mistakes families make, what are some other common mistakes that families make when choosing a senior living community, and how can they avoid those pitfalls?
So I often see families, first of all, they're going into this whole entire situation, emotional, and this is a very personal process. Nobody wants to place their loved one in a supportive community, right? Everybody wants to age in place, but can they? So a lot of times families are coming to me, they're trying to stop the financial bleeding of the 24/7 in-home care, or the skilled nursing facility is pushing them out the door. So they're under the gun to make this decision quickly. So a lot of times I'll see families walk into these beautiful lobbies and they're just like in awe. Whoa, look at the fancy chandelier, and they had piano music playing and lots of activities. And it's like, okay, what is mom's current baseline? Because I don't know at 88 that she's going to, drastically bounce back. Not to say that it's impossible, but let's look at her current baseline and what her future care needs could look like. And does this community support that? Will she need a Hoyer lift? What are the call pendant response times? Because if you're thinking mom's going to go, she's in a wheelchair, she's going to be in the studio apartment, and when she needs help, she can just press that call pendant button. But if she does have a little bit of mild cognitive impairment, does that community have memory care that can support that future care need? So I'm looking at the whole entire picture and trying to really hard to get families to make not so much of an emotional decision and really look at the information, like how long are their call pendant response time? Do they have awake overnight staff? What are your specific care needs so we can appropriately match you? Because it is definitely a matching game. It's about matching like residents with like residents and communities that can support their current and future care needs.
Yeah. And you work with all levels of care, right? There's not a specific like assisted living, memory care. You can handle everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Guiding families beyond the Ritz-Carlton effect when selecting a facility. I talk about that a lot, just because people focus so much on the aesthetics and they don't think about, let's look at the staff, let's look at the longevity of the staff and focus on that, and how long have they been there. And people automatically want the newest, brightest, biggest thing, and sometimes it's the older communities who've been established, and this executive director has been here for 15 years, and their staff, they haven't had any staff turnover in the last 5. Like, that says so much about that community.
Oh, yeah. And you know what I think a lot of big operators don't really get is that culture trickles down. And I'm not on the C-suite executive level of any of these care communities, but I can tell you what my families feel when they move in there, because they call me and say, the sales director is just not canned. The executive director just left. And they're like, I'm on a sinking ship. Should my mom be leaving too? And I'm like, guys, if you would just invest a little bit of time and energy into your people and create a better culture and a better working environment, these people are working so hard. Like, we really need to create a supportive environment around the caregivers who are on the ground doing the hard work, right? Like, we really do. There's a community I'll give them a shout out, Quail Gardens. They're an independent living community, but every month you'll go in there and there's gift baskets and like different little raffle stations for the staff every single month. So the residents get to vote for the staff members and
Oh, that's so cool.
Such and such helped me this month. So anything that can boost, your culture in a community is so important. And in terms of like the aesthetics of the building, I will absolutely 100% tell families all the time, you have to look past the fancy lobby and the chandelier, because what I don't want families to do is to make this decision and they have just this one last chunk of change. And now they're going to go into the Ritz-Carlton of senior living and things start to progress. And now, 2 years down the line, I have to show them the Motel 6 of senior living. So I'm like, go into this conservatively, and you really have to look past the aesthetics. And we're looking at care, we're looking at culture, we're looking at people.
From an operational side too, I think you're talking about like executive directors leaving and staff turnover and things like that. Every single community that we've ever managed, the ones that have the most turnover have the lowest occupancy, hands down. So it's like it trickles down to everything from staff to being able to keep residents happy and in place. I mean, as soon as they start to see the staff turnover, they're thinking about, where's the nearest exit. So it definitely has that effect. There's obviously a growing concern about the affordability of senior living. I mean, just the economy in general, everything seems to be more expensive now than it was. So how do you see the housing shortage impacting middle income seniors? And I'll just say, talking about the housing shortage in general for senior living, I mean, we know that by the year 2030, there's supposed to be at least 2 times the number of seniors looking for housing. And then by 2040, I think it's triple the number. So, and there was a recent report that came out, I think it was like March or February of this year, that basically said that if every single construction project that was slated to start from now until 2026 was finished, it would still only account for about 44,000 additional units across the entire United States, which is like 1/3 of like what we would actually need to help provide housing for all the seniors. So how do you see the housing shortage impacting middle income seniors, and what options do you suggest for families who can't afford the higher end communities?
So in terms of like housing shortages, sometimes I'll encounter families who there's just no way that they're going to be able to afford any type of care community, and they're not willing to part with the asset. So now you're looking at like multi-generational living. So either you're renting rooms out, or, you're moving your family into the family home you grew up in. And I'm starting to see a lot more ADUs pop up in the backyard. And some of these little ADUs there's a company called Wellnest out here in the Bay Area. You should probably have them on your podcast, but they basically have these little prefabbed ADA units. They can drop them right in the backyard.
So cool.
You can have a solar. You don't have to pour concrete. It's not like a huge construction project. You can get it done really quickly. And they have like shock absorbing floors and a roll-in bathroom for somebody that's handicapped. So, anytime my families that I'm working with are stuck in a financial bind, I may refer them out to one of those situations, because we have to do something. There are very few options. We also have a significant amount of tiny homes being popped up at different like church properties throughout the Bay Area. I'm seeing a lot of that. And then I don't know if you've seen some of these 3D printing homes with like Icon.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Some of the technology. I know there's one in our area called Dorothy's House. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they have a couple of communities that they're looking to build. But basically, they're small units that they've put together for seniors, lower income seniors, and it's been pretty amazing what they've been able to do in the community.
Yeah. And there's also a program out here, it's out in San Francisco. It's called Covia. And what they do is they have a home matching program. So let's say you have maybe a struggling grad student that doesn't want to pay Bay Area rent prices, but they're willing to go move in with, young lady, 78-year-old Dorothy down the street in her empty bedroom, and maybe take the trash out and take her shopping once a week or something, like for a concession on rent. So I think government entities are also starting to think about this, because not all of the baby boomers that are coming online have long-term care insurance. Maybe they don't own their house, and maybe they don't have a pension. So what are we going to do?
I think there's another kind of angle too to the senior housing crisis that I I don't know. I haven't really heard many people talk about it, so maybe you can weigh in on it. But so there's this prediction of all of these seniors needing housing, but then there's also, we have to think about life expectancy increases. We have to think about overall lifestyle and wellness increases across the board. I mean, how people live their life now is so different than previous generations, that people are living longer, they're living healthier lives, they're living more active lives. So like the reality that they might need to be in a senior community at a younger age is less likely than it was in the past. So is it really as dire as people say in terms of the number of seniors looking, or can we make assumptions that maybe there's going to be more seniors staying in their homes because they're still active and participating in life outside of, the walls of a community?
Well, I will say I agree with everything that you just said. I am also on City Serve board, which caters to folks from 0 to 99. And we actually had merged two nonprofits. One was the Senior Support Services of the Tri-Valley. We basically merged with City Serve because we were seeing our number one request from Senior Support Services of the Tri-Valley, right, was housing, seniors and housing. That was the number one request. So it wasn't that those seniors needed care. They needed more affordable options because they were no longer willing to work 40, 50 hours a week.
Yeah.
They just couldn't. They just didn't have it in them anymore. Or maybe they were having a hard time finding a job. So at one point we had even explored having like a senior employment fair, because some seniors still do have to work, right? They have to. Maybe their Social Security is only $1,800 a month and they're renting a room somewhere for $800, right? They're still going to have some significant financial needs. So they have to get income from somewhere. So I think it's going to take creativity, and maybe folks don't need care, but we're going to have more maybe co-housing situations.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. So speaking about the leadership roles, you've served many of them. So including commissioner of the Alameda County Area Agency on Aging, president of Senior Support Services of the Tri-Valley. So let's talk a little bit about how those roles influence your perspective on senior care, and particularly with the lack of resources for middle-income seniors.
Families that have made just enough of the right decisions and maybe saved some money, and maybe mom has purchased a trailer or a condo in a 55 and up community, right? They're still in that spot where financially they don't qualify for any benefits. And they don't have enough to pay for care. So it's like, I joined a lot of these organizations because I wanted to be, wanted my ear to the ground. I wanted to know what services, programs, benefits were coming down the pipe, and also advocate for them and say, hey, I'm getting crisis calls all the time. We're here to speak about how this funding is going to be distributed. Here's where it should be going. I will say that there are a lot more affordable senior housing complexes being built. So you're starting to see a lot more funding for the 55 and up affordable housing. But I tell you what, you get on a wait list. I mean, people are waiting. Social workers, discharge planners, care navigators are waiting. Like, okay, it's going to be released at the 11th at 10 o'clock, and they're getting their clients signed up. So yeah, I wish my time spent in all of those leadership roles, I wish there was just more money to go around, and there's just not. So
Yeah, that's definitely a tough spot when we're talking about people's well-being. You want to do everything you can to help people. So you mentioned that legislative efforts too around regulating the placement industry. What are those efforts, and why do you believe regulation is necessary?
So AB 499, a referral agency bill, that will require certain disclosures. So we're going to disclose to families how we're getting paid. I don't think a lot of families know that Place for Mom actually gets paid for sending out a blanket list,
Yeah.
to 10, 15 people. So certain those disclosures are going to be important. Background checks and insurance. So this bill, the intention is for families to have objective, independent, comprehensive, free information about care communities. So it's my understanding that it's passed the Senate unanimously. However, it's not been signed by Gavin Newsom. I imagine that it's because he's probably waiting to appoint a regulatory body. Like, who would manage us? Would it be Department of Social Services? Would it be Health and Services Committee? Like, who is going to manage this new business sector, right?
That's true. That's a whole new arm he would have to create, I guess, right? We've spoken at length about the sandwich generation. I think we're both kind of in that space too. And managing care for both children and aging parents, what advice do you have for people in that situation, balancing both responsibilities, especially when it comes to navigating the emotional toll? I know, just a little side story for me, I'm at the point where my parents are in their mid 70s. I'm starting to see signs of aging, and it's kind of alarming because they live across the country, and they don't tell me everything, so I get these little snippets of like what's going on. But it's like, oh, how are you doing? How's your health? Like, I make sure to ask every time I talk to them. And it's like, my dad will just be like, oh yeah, mom had to get an injection in her knee and I had to help her walk up and down the stairs, but like, then I talk to my mom and she's like, oh yeah, everything's fine. So it's like stuff like that. And it's getting to the point where I know that we need to start having some serious what if conversations, but because cognitively they haven't seen any decline in their opinion, and mobility wise, they can still get up and down the stairs reasonably well. So they're not like ready to make any serious choices, but it's becoming an emotional concern of mine because every time I talk to them, I feel like that discussion needs to happen sooner than later. And I feel like it just keeps getting like pushed to the side.
So I will say the next time you go over for the next holiday, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whatever, a couple things you should check, see if there's any expired food in the house, right? Is there signs of mail piling up, bills not getting paid? I want you to check that garage door. See any dings in there? Are they bumping into that door? And then I really would encourage you to go to both neighbors, introduce yourself, and get their contact information and say, hey, Susan, Kathy, if you notice anything, out of line with my parents, or that, like, maybe the ambulances are coming over a little more often than not, I would sure appreciate a text. I'm trying to manage things from out of state, but if you know something I don't, I definitely would love that information. And then get plugged into a support group, because I think it's so hard for us to kind of help our parents navigate because they don't want to be told what to do. Certainly by our adult children.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where it gets pretty difficult. And anytime I'm working with families where, mom's pretty sharp and she's digging her heels in, but it's clear she's had, the 10th fall, into the hospital, this is getting unsustainable. I always want to encourage families to bring in a senior living advisor like myself into the conversation. That way we can have a conversation with, mom and say, hey, you're in the driver's seat of your life. What do you want to happen? Why don't we go look at some places so you're not feeling like, Jerry's forcing us to downsize and, what I mean? Nobody wants that feeling.
Yeah,
So,
I think
bringing in a third person.
that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, because they don't even identify. They're like, I don't want to go live with a bunch of old people. Like they say that. I'm like, you're the elders in the family. Like, you guys are of that age where people typically, I'm also under the mindset too. Let me just say that I don't believe that. I don't even like the word retirement community, because I know there's people in those communities who haven't retired. They're still working part-time jobs, full-time jobs, as consultants, as contractors. Like, all sorts of people live in senior living communities. So it's more of a lifestyle choice. It's about simplifying their life. Like, they don't need to walk up and down 3 flights of stairs every day. It's unnecessary. They don't need to live in the house they built for my sister and I in 1987, right? Like, there's no point. Like, we're not there. So yeah. So it's, definitely bringing somebody in. I think that's great advice for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. This year I placed, I just did a video with her. I'll put it out shortly. 93-year-old Ruth. She was living independently, single story house. Her home was perfectly adapted, no problem. She was still driving, no problem. But she started to realize that she would go days without talking to anyone. Her neighbors in her cul-de-sac eventually started to die off or move. And she thought, how long am I going to stay here living in total isolation? And what happens if I can't bring my garbage can back up? Like
Yeah.
when will somebody find me? When once a month the housekeeper comes? And she just was like, this isn't healthy. So she finally, cord and left, and she's thriving now. She
Yeah.
has somebody to have dinner with every single night.
That's a scary situation, though. I mean, there was a statistic that I read that said, like, at the age of 65, the average person spends 2 hours a day alone. And by the age of 80, it's like 6 hours. It's a lot of time, and usually that's because their significant other or partner has passed on. So they're just naturally spending more time alone. But that also is like a warning sign that, there needs to be more socialization. Like, you can't go that amount of time throughout the day without speaking to anybody, having any interaction with
Yeah.
anybody. Like, that's got to be really hard. I know, like, I'm 45 and I already see my social circle shrinking, like year by year, just because, people move away, or people have families and they get busy with their family things. And then your extended family starts to, pass away, the older generations. And so it is difficult to see that process unfold. So I can only imagine in my 90s, like, there's definitely going to be some need for socialization.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Something else you champion, I think, really well and talk about is the homelessness crisis. And it's something that you've encountered firsthand in your work. Not often something people think about when it comes to senior care, unfortunately. But how do you see this issue intersecting with senior care, and what can be done to address the rising number of older adults experiencing homelessness? You shared a great document with me that was talking about the rise of the unhoused population of older adults, and how that number is just steadily increasing. So
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely, especially even right here in the Bay Area, within just Alameda, Contra Costa County, we're seeing a majority of our homeless that are 55 and up. They are 55 and up, and their care needs are complex. Their mental health needs are very complex, and we have nowhere for them to go. And it's unfortunate. I've recently had one of the local church-run shelters, so like if it's too hot or too cold, they'll open up, their rectory room or whatever and have just cots out for folks. And I'm getting a call saying, hey, who do you know that can come teach some of our supervisors of these, ready to go homeless shelters that can help someone get off of their cot and onto a commode, or help ambulate them appropriately. We're a little concerned. We have a lot of older adults here that they probably shouldn't be here, but we can't leave them on the street. And they need support getting to and from the bathroom. Like, who can help our team get some training on that? And I was like, oh no, this is where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even across the state now, like, we've passed laws that now say that there can't be any more homeless encampments across the state. So now that's being outlawed. So where are all those people going? And then again, how does that impact the senior population of unhoused? And then what is the solution? How are we going to solve that? It seems insurmountable.
Yeah, it does. It does. And we see it here in the urban areas of the Bay Area. Yeah. I'm just shocked. I grew up in Alameda, and I never would see any. Maybe we'd have like the one occasional homeless guy that everybody kind of knew, like, right, the local drunk or something. But now it's like everywhere you turn. And I'm like, I don't feel safe walking down the street. I'm going to go ahead and get back in my car. So
that's really unfortunate.
So hopefully these politicians do something, get it together, because, when COVID was here and we had to house these people for public health, wow, They got
No
housed real
problem.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super
they got
fast.
housed real quick. There wasn't a makeshift, little house in sight. Everybody was in a hotel somewhere. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see where this goes.
I know even in our small town here in Carmel and in the Monterey area, we've had quite a few homeless encampments that have been torn down since that law came into effect. And obviously the whole point of that is to get the local governments to create housing, to create a situation where they can help people get off the streets, help them rebuild their life or get the support that they need. But I haven't seen anything like that here as of yet. So again, yeah, like you're saying, I'm not really sure what the solution is or what they're even doing to help solve that problem. So that is a bit alarming to create such a chaotic scenario without a solution at the back end of it. So
Yeah. And today we're going to have that call 1:00 about the ALW waiver, because a lot of families that are in a predicament, I'm like, look, let Medi-Cal have all your money, pay the share of cost, and go into one of these supportive communities, even if that means you have to go all the way to Sacramento for an available bed.
yeah.
So let's see what that call is going to be about, because it's a little scary if they're like, no, we're pausing this program, but let's see.
Yeah. Hopefully you're able to share the outcome. I'm very curious to know what happens. So Christine, as we wrap up, how can our audience stay connected with you and learn more about the work you're doing at Creating New Hope Senior Living Advisors?
So follow me on social media, Christine Sevier, and Creating New Hope Senior Living Advisors, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I post a lot of content. So yeah, follow me there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure we put all that into the show notes. And are there any upcoming projects or resources you want to share or mention?
If families are finding themselves, like most folks that are house rich, cash poor, and they need access to quick capital so they can move mom into a supportive housing community, reach out to us, give us a call. We'll connect you with the right senior real estate specialists who are equipped to handle these complex transitions.
Okay. Oh, that's great to know. Thank you. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Christine Sevier for joining us and sharing her insights into senior care and placement. It's clear that her dedication to helping families navigate this complex industry is making a real difference. So if you want to stay connected with Christine and learn more about Creating New Hope Senior Living Advisors, be sure to visit their website at creatingnewhope.org or check out all the links that we've included in the show notes. All of her social media pages will be there, so you can stay connected and check out all the great content that she's posting. So as always, we hope you found this episode insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore the dynamic world of senior living and ethical strategies and insights into marketing, sales, and operations. So also remember that From Leads to Leases isn't just an audio experience. We're also a video podcast. So if you want to see the video versions of our episodes like the one here with Christine, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify channels. So I'm Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth, thanking you for joining us on From Leads to Leases, where we're giving you all of these great senior living industry insights for free and asking nothing in return other than for you to like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it useful. Until next time, lead with strategy and with heart. I'll chat with you again soon. Thanks for joining us today, Christine.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to From Leads to Leases. Are you ready to fill your rooms faster and increase occupancy? Visit ccrgrowth.com to learn about our Senior Growth Innovation Suite, a proven system to generate highly qualified, tour-ready leads, accelerate sales, and reduce acquisition costs. Let's connect and turn your challenges into opportunities. See you next time.